to our website, and we'll also be publishing the slides. So if there's any links that you're looking for throughout this presentation today, you can find those links in these slides that'll be posted to our website. Director Haggerty is going to kick us off today.
Thanks, Rachel.
Are you ready, Director Haggerty?
I am ready. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for attending today's technical assistance call. I hope you are all finding tremendous value in what this team has put together for you each Friday. Really our effort and expression of our support to you all as partners in this program. And I think, you know, the results are not only you go into into some of these program elements with your eyes wide open, but feeling a lot more educated around the requirements and obligations that are there, particularly in the environmentals, as that's it's going to be potentially a very difficult road to navigate. There is a lot to do within it. I think the nature of our programs here in Nebraska, our projects here in Nebraska, for the most part, are going to get through it very easily. I'm aware of a few that probably are going to be a little bit more complex and require additional scrutiny from our federal partners and agencies. But again, hopefully this helps soften some of that for you all. But my primary message today was to remind everybody of a few dates. We signed we accepted and had approved our NIST agreement on December 10th. We ultimately ended up with NIST executing on that agreement on January 7th. If you'll all recall, NTIA provided the states 6 months from the time of execution of that agreement with NIST to complete the subgrantee agreement execution. So all of you that are out there looking at the subgrantee agreement right now, we've made tremendous progress over the last week in terms of getting that completed. But of the 9 subgrantees, we're only about halfway through having received that execution. With the 6-month timeline approaching, which is ultimately June 10th, the Nebraska Office of Broadband is going to put an April 10th deadline on it so that we have some time, should we have subgrantees that have not executed the agreement yet, or provisional subgrantees that have not executed the agreement yet. It gives the Nebraska Broadband Office an opportunity to work through any issues prior to that June 10th date. There is no further guidance around the expiration on June 10th around what would happen, but we would suspect the initial NTIA response would be to rebid the project areas that we don't have an executed agreement around. So that our April 10th deadline here in Nebraska gives us that time to try to work through that prior to getting to the June 10th date. And please work with the office around any concerns, those of you that have not executed the agreement yet, you may have that we can assist with. I guess the final message I would say is we here in the office take the goal of being first to market extremely seriously and sincerely. We really have basically gotten the feedback on lots of occasions that's what Nebraskans expect of this office, is to deploy these funds to address the unserved and underserved areas of Nebraska, and to do it quickly. And as I've shared with all of you personally in calls like this, I believe we are probably the best situated state in the country to be able to do that. So I hope you all share that passion, that sincere goal of ours in expeditiously working through this, and know that whatever we can do to be good partners with you on making that happen, we are absolutely willing to do. So keep that in mind. Again, I would go without saying, thank you for being our partners in this deployment program. We're going to have significant impacts on the lives and the economy of Nebraska through this. And we appreciate you being a part of that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Director Haggerty. Next, Amber, are you ready to lead us through the rest of this presentation?
I am.
All right.
So welcome. Good morning. Thank you guys for coming again this week. We're looking forward to another helpful call. So first off today, we're going to start with talking about some right-of-way permitting and that process and give you guys some examples of when that could come into play. And then we're going to talk about the Section 404 and 408 permitting with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And then at the end of the call, we will again have a question opportunity for all of you. So throughout the presentation today, if you guys have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll make sure to get them answered there at the end. Or you can come off mute at the end of the call and we'll try to answer them live that way. So that's what we're going to do. So one thing I did want to remind everybody of, a couple weeks ago, we told you about our subgrantee resources page on our website. Just wanted to bring that up again. It has some really great resources for all of you, especially around the environmental and permitting aspects. So it's the subgrantee resources page under the NB tab on our website. So we'll jump into talking about some permitting stuff. So following the NEPA review process, you will need certain permits before you can start any construction activities. There are a couple kinds of permits that you may be required to get for your project. The NEPA process will help you identify which permit you will need. If you're looking at your project and you're unsure if a certain permit applies to your project, you can reach out to our office. We're happy to talk about it with you and discuss and figure out what your next steps are for sure. Right-of-way or right-to-occupy permits give you access to private or publicly owned areas. These can come into play at the federal, state, county, or even just like the city level. They can also be required by private companies. Some examples could be the U.S. Army Corps of Engineering permits that we'll talk about in a little bit, the Nebraska Department of Transportation, railroad companies, or even airports in your project areas. Environmental permits are often required at the federal, state, and local levels. Some examples are the U.S. Forest Service's special use permit, the Nebraska Department of Water, Energy, and Environment's construction stormwater permit that we'll talk about in our next TA call, and the floodplain permits at the local level. So the right-of-way permits, for those, you will want to make sure that you identify them early on and start communicating with the permitting agency right away. Some things to keep in mind during this process: the requirements for a permit and the review process will be pretty different depending on the agency. So as an example of this, the city of Waverly here in Nebraska, they put their water and gas lines on one side of the road, and then they put their communication lines on the other side of the road. That just helps with their city planning, but that's not a consistent requirement across the rest of the state. So you're not going to necessarily see that in every single community. So that's just an example of a requirement that might be placed on a permit. You also want to keep in mind that there could be delays for your project because agencies do not always meet super frequently. Many counties in Nebraska only meet once a month, and some of them only meet once a quarter. Railroad companies and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are known to have slow review processes, and so you will want to plan ahead for those permits particularly. This is where that early identification and that communication that I mentioned comes into play. For almost every permit application, you will be required to submit your project plan set. So you want to make sure that your plan is complete and accurate and that it's not necessarily going to change. So if it does change, you will be required to restart the process and have your permit reissued. So you really want to make sure that your plan sets are accurate. One specific type of right-of-way permit that we wanted to go over with you is the NDOT application to occupy Form 19. And so the first link here will take you to NDOT's right-of-way page. You'll be able to find their right-of-way manual here. We encourage you guys to at least review chapter 1 of that manual. This is the chapter relating to broadband projects, because broadband is treated like a utility by NDOT. So that's a little different than most people consider it, but that is how it is treated by NDOT. So if your project is going to need access to an NDOT right-of-way, you will be required to fill out the form on the second link, the application to occupy. And then you can submit that to the district office or offices that you're requesting in. If your project crosses district lines, you will need to send in that application to each of those districts. The picture that's here, I know it's not super clear, so I wanted to point out this picture I took directly out of the manual that I mentioned a little bit ago, so you'll be able to find those contacts in that manual as well. So now we'll jump into the USACE permits and the Clean Water Act. So the Clean Water Act protects rivers, lakes, and wetlands, regulating what can be discharged into U.S. waters and requiring permits before certain work can impact them. Section 404 addresses impacts to rivers, creeks, and wetlands from dredged or fill material such as sand and rock. Section 408 applies to activities that alter or occupy USACE project areas, such as levees and flood control systems. Depending on your project, you may be required to get both kinds of permits. Both the 404 and the 408 permits are administered by the USACE district offices. These offices are based on watershed districts, and so the Kansas City district covers the southernmost portion of the state, and Omaha district covers the rest of the state. So contacts for both of those districts are in the appropriate DPA summaries that you'll find on our website, but we can also just share them with you directly. So if you need those contacts, you can absolutely just reach out to our office. As I mentioned, the Section 404 permits are required if a project will impact waterways in your project area. This permit will be required even if the effects are only temporary, so make sure you're considering those activities as well. If a 404 permit is required, most broadband projects will be able to apply with a nationwide Permit 57. This is designed to streamline the permit process, but it still has to work through the appropriate channels, so you still need to plan to give it some time. Ideally, your projects will not cause any impacts with the waterways, and you'll be able to put that into this form and submittable that you submit to our office, but you will be required to prove that. You can't just say that in the form, you have to provide proof. So whether that be through your plans or through a study that you've worked through, whatever that looks like, you have to provide that proof in the form that you submit to NBO. And this will be inspected and enforced throughout the life of the project. So we're not just going to take your word for it. You have to show us the proof and then be prepared to show it to us when you're actually doing the work. If you think that your project may require a Section 404 permit, we really encourage you guys to reach out to our office. We'd love to talk to you about it and assist you throughout applying for that permit. So then, as I mentioned, the Section 408 permits are required. Next slide. There it goes. Section 408 permits are required if you will be working near or on a current U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project. USACE projects often benefit navigation, flood risk management, hydropower production, recreation, irrigation, even municipal water supply systems. And so the review process for a 408 permit is a really long process. It takes a long time, and the permits are not often approved. So we've even been advised by representatives from USACE that NBEAD projects should avoid interacting with USACE projects whenever possible. If that's not going to be an option for your project, if you could let us know early, and then we'll help you start that that consultation process with the USACE office and figure out what your next steps are. So then some possible outcomes for your permits. Oftentimes you could get an additional information needed or an approval. If additional information is needed, the quicker you provide that information to the office, to the USACE office, the sooner your review will be completed. And then keep in mind that even if you are approved, your permit will probably include some special or regional conditions that must be followed to comply with that permit. These conditions are enforceable by USACE, and non-compliance risks the cancellation of your permit. If your project requires a USACE permit, either of them, the 404 or the 408, you must wait until you have that permit before you can begin any construction activities. I also mentioned earlier the nationwide permit 57. New versions of that permit come out in March of 2026, and they'll be valid for 5 years. So if you think that your project is going to be needing a USACE permit, give us a call and we'll figure out which version of the form is appropriate for you to fill out at that time. And like I've mentioned, we'll help you walk through this review process. So the USACE websites are kind of tricky to navigate, and so we included the links to those sites directly here. Obviously, there's the one for the Nebraska office in Omaha and the Kansas one in Kansas City. And so these slides will get posted on our website, and so you'll be able to get these links. But like I said, the sites are kind of tricky to navigate, so we wanted to give them to you directly. We'll now move into Q&A. I threw a lot at you guys here in a pretty short time frame. So if you guys have any questions now, you can shout them out. Or Rachel, is there anything in the chat?
There is nothing in chat currently. So we'll just open it up to the floor.
Excellent.
Well, Rachel, while we're waiting for a potential question, great job, Amber. A lot of information here, but presented in, I feel, a really effective way. So thank you, Amber. I just wanted to go back to my original, or to my statement in the beginning around this critical date that's we're ensuing of April 10th to have subgrantee contract or subgrantee agreements executed. Again, April 10th. You all will receive a letter from the office as well, outlining that date and what we're attempting to do here. So I didn't want you to think that should there be somebody from your company that's not on this call that needs to be aware of this or needs to be further made aware of it, you'll all get a letter at your company from us here soon.
Thank you, Director Haggerty. Any questions, burning questions that you can't wait till next week? Amber, I think that means you did a great job.
Perfect. We'll go with it. As I've mentioned several times throughout this presentation and in our other presentations, we really encourage you guys to reach out to us at any point with questions, because we know this is going to be kind of confusing. And so as Director Haggerty mentioned earlier and mentioned again now, we can't move forward with your projects until we've got our subgrantee agreement signed. So please make sure to work with Diane on that and get those figured out. You will not receive access to the submittable portal to begin working on your NEPA review until after that. And then we'll work with you through that process. So obviously no questions today, but if you have them later, you can shoot them to the inbox listed here, nbo.admin, and we'll get some answers for you. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.